Welcome to the Calm Analytics channel. I'm Boris Tezengausen. Today is June 16th. Here are the main news stories at this moment. So let's start this episode with some very good news. The Moscow Oil Refinery in Kapotnya is on fire after being hit by our drones. Let's watch this video. Beautiful. Well, first of all, Russians have learned how to properly film the strikes. Let me remind you, the Moscow Oil Refinery is one of the largest oil processing enterprises in Russia. It has a processing capacity of 11 million tons per year. This plant supplies 40% of the entire fuel market in Moscow and 70% of the Moscow region. And not just in gasoline, but also in diesel and jet fuel. You know, right now we are genuinely rejoicing at the strikes on the Moscow Oil Refinery. I want to emphasize that Ukrainians are a very peace-loving people. We have never needed anything that belonged to others. Ukrainians have always loved to build, not destroy. That is, Ukraine has always been renowned for its agriculture, its engineers, its hardworking, hospitable, and warm-hearted people, but absolutely intolerant of occupiers and invaders. Just as Ukrainians know how to warmly welcome guests, they are equally skilled at destroying uninvited ones. Every strike on Russian oil infrastructure is a blow to the war chest. That is especially a strike on the oil refinery in the Moscow region. Every such strike brings the end of this war closer. And this strike on the Moscow Oil Refinery also carries an important, an extremely important, I would say, political message. After the strikes on Kronstadt, on the oil depot in St. Petersburg during the Economic Forum, do you remember that? This is yet another signal and proof that Ukrainian drones are now breaking through even the densest Russian air defense rings. Putin keeps saying that everything is under control, that the strikes aren't causing any damage, and then the very next day drones hit Moscow directly. And they take out one of the key oil refineries on which, by the way, Moscow itself depends. On television, there's an illusion of control, but when Muscovites look out their windows, they see a completely different reality. Do you know the distance from that oil refinery in Kapotnya to the Kremlin? Right to the very center of the Kremlin. Do you know what the distance is? 16 kilometers, 612 meters. That means the refinery in Kapotnya is probably the most guarded and protected one. The refinery in Russia, well, maybe even in the world, and still, nothing could protect it from our drones. It'll be interesting to see what happens when ballistic missiles come into play. I told Russians it's only going to get worse. By the way, those who are a bit smarter have already started stockpiling fuel in the Moscow suburbs. Moscow will be left without gasoline, that's a fact. On days like these, it's just balm for the soul to go on social media and read the comments from Muscovites themselves. Let me quote a couple of them. Moscow. Guys, this isn't funny anymore. Strikes on refineries, how is that even normal? A friend just called me, his dad works in the ministry, and he told him straight up, in the coming days, stay home, stock up on gasoline, get some groceries, update your supplies, and get ready. Get ready for what? Why aren't we being told anything officially? People, hello, what on earth is going on? Why is everyone silent? Seriously, why is everyone silent? Oh, here's another one. Guys, this is insane. Where is it hitting in Moscow? For the first time, I saw a drone right next to my house. 7 explosions near Lubertsy. I'm in shock. Wow, I'm really shocked. Well, there are comments from Ukrainians there. Instead of whining, couldn't you have filmed the video properly? You're being liberated. Hang in there a little longer, just a bit. Hang in there, soon the armed forces will liberate all of you. And of course, an address to the Russian military. Lay down your arms. It'll be easier for us to come to an agreement with you than with the senile old men in the Kremlin. Here's another video, I just can't help but share it, showing how our drone Lyuty gracefully flies right over the metro, Kotelniki. Notice it's flying, not into a building, not into a church, not setting anything on fire. The market near the metro, it's flying straight to its target, the Moscow Oil Refinery. Take a look. The girls are relaxing. There they are, drones right over Moscow. This is the new reality for Muscovites. By the way, Moscow authorities reported that 86 drones were shot down over the Moscow region last night. But how did they get there? Putin said that there is air defense everywhere in Russia. If you look at it directly, it turns out the drones passed through the Bryansk and Kaluga regions, passed through calmly, and made it there. Through the Bryansk and Kaluga regions from Ukraine is the most likely route to Moscow. So it turns out this route is not protected. Putin lied to Russians again. By the way, friends, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. It's important. You can do it right now. It helps promote the channel. We are fighting against Putin's propaganda. It's much more fun and effective to do it together. So make sure to subscribe. And let me remind you, everyone who subscribes to this channel gets soft and silky hair. You know, in 1968, Alexander Galich wrote his famous anti-war song. At that time, he was trying to protest or condemn, in fact, not protest, but judge the introduction of Soviet troops into Czechoslovakia. And there are lines in it that just perfectly fit today's reality. In Russia, citizens of the fatherland are in danger. Our tanks are on foreign soil. Why did you come to Ukraine? Here you are, and you could have left, you could have gotten out, but no. A senile maniac will push Russia into the abyss. And what's more, he'll watch as she falls, not realizing there's a chain around his own ankle. That's the irony with this Russia. Russia will collapse, and he'll go down with her. In every episode, we have an important fundraiser for Ukraine's defense forces. Today, we continue raising funds for the soldiers of the 1st Artillery Battery of the Artillery Division of the 101st Separate Brigade. We're raising funds for a vehicle. Our artillerymen are hitting the enemy so hard, it's unbelievable. But right now, they really need transportation. Unfortunately, vehicles are now expendable. They get destroyed quickly. Let's help our artillerymen. They're fighting on one of the hottest fronts, Konstantinovka-Druzhkovka. The link to donate is in the description of this video. There are mono, private, and PayPal options for those who want to help from abroad. If you're watching on another channel, the QR code always leads to the fundraiser. Our artillerymen are very modest, and they know their job 100%. Let's help them out. And in every episode, I want to say a special thank you for supporting our fighters. Speaking for myself, thank you, and also on behalf of the hundreds of our defenders whom you have already helped. Thank you so much. Some interesting changes have started happening with Lukashenko. Quote, Belarus will be very vulnerable if Ukrainian troops start attacking our territory the way they attack Russia, Lukashenko said. But what about his recent statements? We'll strike everyone. We have Oreshnik, we have nukes, and so on. We have everything. Take a look at this video I'm about to show you. Also, notice that despite the heavy use of TV filters, the dictator's health is deteriorating. In other words, this tremor can no longer be hidden by any filters. Watch.
Первое, мы это понимаем, поэтому не хотим воевать. Беларусь очень уязвима в военном отношении, если Украина начнет атаковать Беларусь так же, как она атакует Россию. Потому что Беларусь у украинских военных как на ладони. Мы это прекрасно понимаем, что наши основные объекты жизнеобеспечения, производственные и логистические, окажутся под ударом. Ну, как они заявили, у них уже 500 таких целей на территории Беларуси намечено.
So what happened? He even added that this is one of the reasons why our country will not get involved in the Russian-Ukrainian war. But you're already involved and have been for a long time. And Lukashenko also apologized to Zelenskyy. This is not a joke either. If Vladimir was offended, I offer him my apologies. I shouldn't have said those words, considering that he is, after all, at war. Well, this is about those words. Remember, he said something like Zelenskyy smoked something wrong, and so on. So the expired Draniki, the most agile political weathercock I know of. As soon as the wind shifts a little, Lukashenko changes his statements. That is, apparently, he looked at the strikes on Russian oil refineries and the looming fuel crisis in Russia, and realized that his 2 refineries, our drones could burn them down in just a matter of minutes, and no Russia would be able to save them. Russia can't even save itself. So Lukashenko backed down, just like he always does. He pretended to be this kind-hearted collective farmer who has nothing to do with it. As they say, when your refineries aren't burning yet, but your ass is already on fire. Another statement. From Lukashenko, the war is basically happening right in our backyard. We don't want this war. We need to sit down at the negotiating table, the three of us, Lukashenko, Putin, and Zelenskyy, to come to an agreement and stop. Go to Putin. Why are you preaching here? You're just blowing hot air, stirring up nothing. The last thing we need is you at the negotiating table. We don't want this war. Then why from your own territory did you so treacherously like a rat let Russian troops through? Remember the ones who rushed straight to Kiev? That immediately makes him a full-fledged accomplice. These statements show that Lukashenko is scared. Indeed, he sees that a turning point has occurred. He sees that the war has fully come to the territory of the Russian Federation. And he senses, like a tuber, that they might come for him soon as well. And then they'll just slice him up like chips and no one will save him. Neither Putin, nor Russia, nor the Russian special services. I think he is rewatching it in horror. Or maybe he isn't even rewatching it at all. He hid all of it, blocked the newsreels about Ceaușescu. I think he just sleeps and sees this scenario in his nightmares. After all, the fall of Ceaușescu's regime happened in literally 5 days. On December 21st, 1989, Ceaușescu gave a speech in Bucharest. He was booed. Those are the famous scenes. The next day, his army switches sides to join the protesters. Such a scenario is absolutely possible in Belarus. And already on December 25th, an extraordinary military tribunal holds a session less than an hour long. It lasted, and as a result, the verdict and execution of Ceaușescu and his wife followed. That is, the dictator who ruled Romania, for almost a quarter of a century, lost power and was executed in just a few days. Of course, Lukashenko, who has ruled Belarus for more than 30 years, is terribly afraid of this scenario. And if last time Russia helped him suppress the protests, now the situation is completely different. Here it might not be about Lukashenko anymore. By the way, he has actually become quite candid lately. He must have had a dose of pure truth or something. The commander of Ukraine's unmanned systems forces, Magyar, showed one of the drones before launch. A message was written on the drone with a marker: "The Lavra will stand. For centuries, Moscow will fall." This was right before the attack on the Moscow Oil Refinery. And Magyar once again emphasized an absolutely correct point. Let's quote him. "The economy of retribution for Ukraine's absolute moral superiority over the barbarians. Flashes of fuel instead of flashes of anger. Pragmatic punishment without emotion or unnecessary words," wrote Magyar. He also hinted that strikes on oil refineries will continue. That is, without any hysteria. Putin, Russia is trying to provoke us into attacking. To attack some of their so-called sacred sites or something else. No, they'll take out the oil refineries, and then we'll see what happens next. As I already said, you and Putin will burn down the Kremlin yourselves. But the Moscow Oil Refinery is not all. Stanitsa Poltavskaya, that's in Krasnodar Krai, there is such a place, and the Poltavskaya oil depot was attacked there. Importantly, it serves as an intermediate link between the oil refineries, those owned by Lukoil, and the end consumers of fuel, that is, the gas station networks. There will be even less gasoline. Meanwhile, at the G7 summit, Trump, Macron, and Zelenskyy met separately from the main meeting. Today, a separate meeting between Trump and Zelenskyy is also planned. All in all, the balding mackerel is now watching from the basement, probably hissing, spitting at the screen. This is my spot. I used to sit here before. Why? So Peskov stated that the Kremlin had not received an official proposal from Zelenskyy through official channels to meet with Putin at the G7 summit. And he repeated again that if Zelenskyy wants to meet with Putin, he can fly to Moscow. Of course, we know you ghouls inside out. Well, for now, it's Zelenskyy. Instead, they send drones, so to speak, for reconnaissance. I think that after a few more such attacks, maybe the Botox jellyfish will agree to meet on neutral territory if he can find kerosene for his plane. And Trump said that Russia should make a deal. Trump also stated that Iran is taking a back seat, and now Trump will focus on the war in Ukraine. Well, it's hard to say whether to be happy about that or not. Now they'll start purring on the phone with Putin again, pressuring Ukraine, but times have changed. Ukraine has shown that now it will be the one doing the pressuring. Here's another very telling piece of news. Tatneft, one of Russia's largest oil companies, has introduced a temporary limit on gasoline sales at all gas stations in Russia. According to the operator, in addition to the fuel sales limit, there are also payment restrictions. Only cash is accepted. Welcome back to the 90s. Now, by the way, Russians across the country will probably have to tighten their belts so that Moscow doesn't run out of fuel to help Muscovites so they don't feel the shortage. Well, what did you expect? It's long been known that Moscow is not Russia. And at the end of the program, there's just a wonderful... Do you know how the government of the Russian Federation justified the fact that there's no gasoline, there are lines, ration cards, and so on? Let me quote it for you now. The first deputy chairman of the State Duma Committee on Energy, Igor Ananskik, explained to Russians that there are no problems with gasoline. Seriously, he said this with a straight face. Quote, "The situation is due to the overlap of several factors. At the same time, seasonality. Some refineries have been taken offline for scheduled maintenance. They are always repaired in the summer according to special schedules. Maintenance starts in May. In Crimea, for example, the situation has already stabilized. It's just that right now, in some regions, a combination of circumstances has occurred. There's nothing critical. It's just an amazing country, truly amazing. Orwell is nervously smoking on the sidelines. Scheduled refinery maintenance. The sponsor of scheduled maintenance. Magyars and Ukrainian drones. Well, friends, take care of yourselves, take care of your loved ones, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Let's help our artillerymen. We have just a little bit left to finish raising funds for their vehicle. The link to the fundraiser is in the description of this video. Have a peaceful day, everyone, and glory to Ukraine.